this video, I will summarize some popular versions of Agile and which ones to consider for large-scale projects. Hello, my name is Neil Potter and I help Agile teams go beyond the basics of Agile software development. Please click below to subscribe for future videos. Many project teams start using Agile for their work and then need to apply Agile to large organizations and many projects. In this video, I will describe what options to consider. So if you Google the word Agile methodology or Agile method, then you're going to get a big long list, a bit like the one on my screen here. And every few months it's going to change. So in this video, I'm going to discuss some of the key ones or most popular ones and describe kind of what they are at a high level and if they are good for scaling Agile to a large organization. So before I go into the details of a few of those examples, I want to discuss briefly what it means to be Agile without all of the buzzwords. So because a lot of the methodologies in that list have a lot of key buzzwords that they like to use to describe their particular approach. So basically Agile means that you have a flow defined, for example the yellow boxes, and that there is a inspect and adapt period every 2 to 4 weeks to align yourself back with the customer, what you're building, and get lessons learned feedback to the team. So firstly, we have the demo where we kind of show the customer what we have built so far and get their feedback very early on. And that's scheduled typically at the end of every sprint or iteration to kind of get the feedback from whoever the customer is for the work finished at that point. And secondly, there is a lessons learned or retrospective activity to get lessons learned back to the team. So to determine how they arrived at this point, things that went well to repeat, and things that could be improved for next time to make the next iterations go better. Most teams do a very good job on the demo part of it and less well on the retrospective part of it. So the essence of Agile is getting regular feedback on the product and the process of the team and adjusting. All the other methodologies have key terms and key ideas and concepts they've added to it and a lot of fancy words. But if we strip all those away, we end up with a diagram like this. I'm not going to go through every Agile methodology because you can see them on the website and see the details, but I want to talk about a few of them, mostly the common ones or ones that I've seen most people kind of use. We'll discuss Scrum briefly, and then Scaled Agile Framework or SAFe, Disciplined Agile Delivery or DAD, large-scale Scrum or less, and Scrum at scale. So I want to discuss kind of what some of the key attributes of each one are, and at the end, what I would recommend if you are going to scale Agile to cope with a large organization and coordinate many teams that have to work together. So let's start out with Scrum. Scrum is probably the most popular Agile method. It is very simple and straightforward. It is a framework of activities you go through to organize and get feedback on the work. It is well defined in the Scrum Guide, which is a website in many languages, and it consists of a set of roles like product owner, Scrum Master, and the team. The team being developers, engineers, testers, etc. That do the work. And then there's a basic flow you go through. We have a backlog where the work not done yet is put, so maybe requirements or features, and then we go through release planning, basically determining what the likely deliverable would be maybe in 2, 3, or 4 months. That word release planning was there at the beginning of the Scrum Guide, and it kind of got pulled out for a few years and then put back in recently. The idea is that you have a bigger scope. I think the word they use now is product goal. But whatever the words actually are, or whatever words you have, it means you have a long-term perspective, maybe 3 or 4 months out, of what you want to plan to release to the customer downstream. And then we go through sprint planning. So we're basically determining the tasks and time and who's going to do what for the team for the iteration, which could be 2 or 4 weeks. And then we go through the iteration itself and then track progress. And then at the end, we have the demo, basically to show the customer what we have built and get some feedback on that. And then a retrospective to kind of determine as a team how we got to this point. And if there are things that are broken or cumbersome or difficult, we can then assess those and fix them. And if there were things we did particularly well or went particularly well, we could recognize those and repeat those downstream. So the essence of Agile is to have this inspect and adapt approach every 2 to 4 weeks. And the Scrum Guide gives you these steps in the end of the iteration to give you that feedback. So a couple of comments about Scrum. Complex or easy? I would say it's easy to do. That the guide is fairly clear, it is concise, and it is a framework. You add details to it. So to learn the easy steps and kind of start doing them, it will be fairly straightforward. Do you need to add any details? Yes, you do. It is a framework. For one of the things I like about Scrum at the beginning, like maybe 20 years ago, is that they put a framework where you add things to it yourself. So you have the basic structure to kind of follow to do the inspect and adapt approach, but then you are left to kind of fill in the details of your own particular organization, like how you're going to do a backlog, what is sprint planning to you, what level of sprint planning you're going to do, how to do testing and deployment, etc. So a lot of the details are then added by the organization. And scaling included? No, this is really a team-focused activity. It was designed for a small team with fairly good access to a customer or product champion to going to get feedback. And it doesn't by itself have any details planned into it for scaling. So the next one is Scaled Agile or SAFe. This is well defined on the website, scaledagileFramework.com. It is a large collection of information seen by the diagram here that you have to navigate and understand and kind of learn. On the bottom right here, we have basic Agile Scrum that works at the team level. And then we have the train, which is like a program of several programs maybe working together in a kind of a value stream. And then we have larger solution activities put up here to coordinate many teams together. And then at the enterprise level or the division level, we have portfolio. So each of these words and diagrams on the screen are clickable, and you can then see the definitions of those activities in the diagram. Now, one of the things I liked about SAFe is that it is a complete solution. So pretty much anything you care to know about, whether it's risk management or coordination or portfolio management, there are some concepts added to it to cover that. One of the downsides is it is very heavy. It is a lot of information. Every concept known to person-kind, whether it's Crosby or Lean or Scrum and Agile, and you name it, DevSecOps and SecDevOps and Ops DevSec and anything is in there. So what I found a little overwhelming on this is you have to learn their language, and if you don't kind of use their language in the way they kind of want it to be used, then you don't feel like you're doing it correctly, although actually you may be doing it correctly altogether. The second thing I didn't like too much about it, or found a bit frustrating, is you can click on the boxes in the website and see all the details, but they're very flowery language. It makes you kind of feel like you should be doing this, and it's very cool to do these things, but to know exactly what a design is or what particular steps you should follow, you really have to then go to a course and then go through and get educated on that. The website only takes you kind of so far, so you can left hungry for further details even after they give you the paragraphs and paragraphs in the website. So what do I think about this from a summary perspective? Complex or easy? I would say complex. It is very much a very encompassing methodology with every bell and whistle in there. You need to add details? Probably not. I am assuming the details are in there. I took the 6-day course, which I think was done particularly well by the instructor, and I still found it kind of overwhelming to just absorb all the stuff and figure out kind of what is going on. The course obviously makes it more clear and makes it more pragmatic, but there's a lot in there, and I would say you don't need to add much detail yourself. Scaling, by definition you're scaling because it's scaled agile. So everything you kind of need to know is kind of in there for scaling, although it may take a little while to organize and figure out how to use. The next one is DAD, Disciplined Agile Delivery. This started out a while back by Scott Ambler and Mark Lyons. I think they were basically IBM employees back then, and it has kind of come to life and now been owned by PMI, or the Project Management Institute. And so this is really like a hybrid life cycle. We have basically here a beginning to end IT life cycle from concept inception to construction. This is kind of where the Agile Scrum stuff is, building features and getting them kind of tested and delivered, and then transition, production, and retirement. So in the DoD definition, they cover a lot of details that are fairly easy and high level, like secure funding, vision, initial scope, etc. These are the things you'll typically do in any large organization or large project where you have to kind of figure out what you're going to do and get the team organized together. So this is kind of the hybrid approach where some of the older or traditional waterfall activities, which people have to do anyway, and figure out funding, whatever, they have been added and made more complete into the diagram. Now, there is a web link at the bottom here, which is the viewer, and you actually can go through and see the details of every box in their viewer. And every box basically has a little kind of tree of bullets where you can kind of see what they recommend for how to do that particular box. So one of the things I found a little bit frustrating in their viewer, their browser, is some of the terms they had in there that are a bit confusing. So they give these bullet points of things you could do to implement that practice or that box of the diagram. And one example was like boundary spanner. And like, I don't use the word boundary spanner. If you look at the details of that, they were discussing having people coordinate interfaces with other people. Okay? So I think of people interfaces and coordination, not boundary spanner. So after a while, I got a bit tired of reading the fluffy, fancy terms that you then have to figure out kind of what those meant to understand what they recommended in the box. So the marketing material, the kind of first level of the PMI part of this website, was very kind of highfalutin. Like, this is like the wow stuff and amazing stuff, and if you do this, it'll be amazing too. And I got a little tired of that kind of style. And when I went into the browser in the details, I kind of got a little tired of the fluffiness of the words, and you're going to have to look them up yourself. So I'm sure if you take the course and you could take the certification, things will become more clear. Though I haven't taken that particular course or that certification, but from a web view and getting a free kind of version of it, it was a little confusing in terms of the language that they were using. So is it complex or simple? I would say it's medium complex because they've added these hybrid phases before and after Agile, and this use of these key fluffy kind of terms in their definition that makes it a bit more difficult to understand, and you have to really kind of dig into the details to understand what are they talking about with these key terms. Do you need to add details to it? Yeah, I think if you're given the term boundary spanner and you don't use that, then you're going to have to figure out what that means to you and add details to it. I'm sure you would get more details in a course if you were to go get a course or certification. And then scaling included, yeah, they have done that a little bit. There are sections in their web browser view on the enterprise and coordination section. And so you can see kind of what they have in mind for coordinating projects. The next one is less or large scale Scrum. And this again has a diagram, an active diagram on the website. You can click on the boxes here in the words. It has basically Agile Scrum in the middle. And then these key things on the outside, like principles and system thinking, etc., lean thinking. A bit like SAFe, where they've taken a concept from industry and kind of try to shove it in there somehow and make it kind of work. It comes across as a little, we have everything, and they may not actually fit together particularly well, or they're concepts that kind of you have to figure out how they work together. So it's a little easier than SAFe to understand or navigate. And one thing I liked about it is that you could quickly get to some pragmatic steps you could do. For example, they have the sprint planning number 1 activity, where in a large scale project, you have all the stakeholders together and teams and figure out the bigger vision of what you want to do. And then sprint plan number 2 activity, where the teams go off and do their own local planning given the bigger context, and then come back together to figure out where they stand. So it was a quicker read and easy to kind of get down to the detailed steps of what they recommend for scaling to a larger organization. So is it complex or easy? I would say low to medium. Because it's based on Scrum, which is the kind of the positive, you can understand that pretty well. And it actually has some pragmatic steps in there which are quick to understand. I would say low to medium. Do you need to add details? Yeah, because they give you lots of high-level concepts like be lean or coordination activities. You have to really figure out for yourself how you want to do that. And then scaling, yeah, they have put in activities in here for scaling. The next one is Scrum at Scale. And so Scrum at Scale is basically Jeff Sutherland and colleagues that did Scrum. And what they're doing is taking the Scrum methodology and basically reapplying it to a larger scale project. So basically here we have our Scrum team, and this is our Scrum of Scrum. So basically we apply Scrum again to the collection of projects to coordinate them. So as a Scrum team members will coordinate themselves through Scrum activities, then Scrum teams will coordinate themselves with the same Scrum activities. And then you could take it one step further, like Scrum of Scrums, where all the Scrum teams have a representative and they're going to work together to coordinate themselves, and that happens again at one high level. So what I like about this is that you're learning one set of steps and then learning how to apply them at a high level, either one or twice more, given the size of the project organization you deal with. And they have things like Executive Action Team, which help you do the coordination and statusing of everything kind of going on in the organization. So is it complex or easy? I would say simple, because you're learning basic Agile Scrum and reapplying that again to the team, and that would make it fairly straightforward to keep on reapplying. Do you need to add details? Yes. Just like Scrum is a framework, this is like a meta framework. So yes, you have to add details for how you're going to do design or testing or test planning, etc. And then scaling included. Yeah, by definition, scaling is included in the approach they put together. So what would I recommend if you want to learn Agile for the first time for a small team, and or then scale to many teams that have to work together on a bigger program? I would say pick something simple at the beginning and build up as you need. If you sent everybody in the company to safe training, yes, they would be happy with all the money you're going to spend, and people would be indoctrinated with the language, but would they really going to do anything differently when they got back? And would you have to then coordinate what they learned and how they're going to do it? I would say that could work, but you may have to then get a coach to kind of help you do that from the safe organization or safe trained person. And that could be like a big bang approach where you hope it's going to work out, but it may not be as easy as you planned. My recommendation would be to start simple and get teams doing good Scrum Agile. Get them good at learning the philosophy of inspect and adapt, and get them good at that. And then bit by bit figure out maybe 2 or 3 teams have to work together, and how should they coordinate. Maybe pick out some things from other systems or solutions that can help you do that. And then kind of build up and practice as you're going to go, versus spend a lot of money and then have to figure out what are you going to do with all these skills and who's going to do what and how it's going to work. Secondly, don't get tied to the labels. All these particular methods, a lot of them have their own fancy labels, like WOW, the way we work, going to be WOW, trains, streams, boundary spanners, it goes on forever. Sometimes they are terms that are been around for a long time, like lean engineering. Sometimes they are brand new words they put together and they make you feel like you should know and learn that word. I would say all those words are completely meaningless and have no particular value inherently. What we really care about is you following the intent, that you understand the intent or follow the intent of Agile, the inspect and adapt. You find that useful and you can make progress on that. And then bit by bit, you can expand those practices. And then if you want to label them in whatever label you want to do or use, then you can label them. I would not get sucked into thinking that the new label is going to cause the solution to work out. Like there's one set of agile things out there that discuss fiefdoms and tribes and chapters and squads and that kind of stuff. Okay, if are you more productive if you call it a squad versus a team, or a chapter versus a guild versus a program? I don't think it makes any difference. So I think the learning the intent of the practice is more important than the label. If you've never done a large-scale project before, then I would say the less or Scrum at scale are very simple ways to kind of start and kind of learn the basics of how to coordinate and organize many teams that have to work together. And you're learning some principles here that you can reapply time and time again at larger entities in the organization. If you have done successful large-scale projects before, which you may well have done before Agile, look back in the past maybe 10-15 years where you actually did a large program, it actually worked out pretty well and it's still functioning today, then you actually had some skills for this back then. And I would say go look at those skills and then kind of reapply them. So maybe you start off with Scrum, because Scrum gives you the essence of Agile and it's not that difficult. And secondly, you look at the skills you were doing before, like stakeholder management, dependency management, risk management, coordination events, and IPTs, or where the team's going to coordinate themselves, and then kind of reapply those older skills in a new kind of approach for Agile. So if you really have organizations that have done large-scale systems in the past, really there are some key disciplines and skills that you have that can be then refreshed and kind of reused. So in summary, the most important thing is to be agile. That is to have a frequent inspection of what the team is doing and doing corrective action based upon the feedback, both the product and the retrospectives or lessons learned. And secondly, start with something simple and add practices to it to avoid being overwhelmed and to kind of grow as you develop these skills. Thanks for watching the video. For more help on these topics or your Agile implementation, please see the links below.